Dr. Reif's work? Boy, that saves a lot of time today. Well, if you're familiar with what happened in the past, I'll move on to the present. BioRay is based in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm the president of the company. And for 12.5 years, we've been working on Dr. Reif's technology. And it doesn't sound like that with our BioRay light and sound generator. What we have accomplished over the years to jump through the hoops is we started out to play on the medical field, the AMA, not to make the mistake that Dr. Reif did. Since he wasn't a medical doctor, he did not understand medical politics. We understand them thoroughly, and we try to avoid all confrontations, which we've been able to do. Not only that, we've made some major accomplishments in those 12.5 years. We started back in 1986. By 88 to 1990, we've done 2 university in vitro studies, one of which was published under auspice of Dr. Harvey Bank in 3 different publications in December of 89, 90, and 91. We moved on from there to animal studies, and then we did 5.5 years of volunteers, human volunteers. And we've continued to accept human volunteers. And along the way, we've also been allowed into some major hospitals. MD Anderson in Houston, which is one of the top-notch cancer centers. Memorial Hospital, also in Houston. We've been allowed into a VA hospital in Sarasota, and also into an emergency ward in Miami, Florida. Now, does the BioRay save everybody? No, it doesn't. Does it help everybody? Yes, to some extent. The one thing that we have found and that we try to pass on as we work with people who come to us or find our chat houses across the nation, and I'll explain our chat house system in a little bit. But we are each responsible as individuals for our own health and our own life. The BioRay, our nutritional protocols, and things that we have developed over the past 12 years make it easier for the individual to understand a terminal disease. And it seems that in our society we are terminal when orthodox medicine has no other remedies. That doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other alternatives out there. There are. Lorenzo's oil, for example, and a whole host of other things. The other night on Dateline, an Alzheimer's drug, or arthritis drug, they found extremely effective against polyps or cancer polyps, a particular disease that affects 25,000 people a year. So there's a lot out there. So what have we been doing, and what makes us different, and what makes us so effective? Well, one of the things that we have been able to do with the backing of some of our investors is to hire very good, talented people to explain to me and our engineers the principles of Reif technology and what we theorized Dr. Reif was doing and back engineer it. And that's exactly what we did. We hired 3 of the old-time radio guys that knew as much as you could know from that time era about radio tubes, what was available, taking into account the genius of Dr. Reif and what he could invent and bring forth, and compare that to what we know in the notes and his lab things that has survived. It's amazing to me, a lot of people that I talk to, they will tell me right off the bat that the government or whoever it was destroyed all of Reif's lab notes and his microscopes and everything like that, and that simply is not true. Most of his original lab notes are available. They're distributed to a lot of different people that are trying to make a lot of money off of them. Fortunately, we've been able to buy about 4 boxes of the original stuff. If you stop by our display booth out there, we've put some of it into book form. His lab notes, his correspondence. We own the schematics to his microscope. on the original 16 millimeter film footage from his lab, which we've been able to take frame by frame in certain sections and study his waveform patterns. We've also made it a priority to buy any equipment out there that was related to what Dr. Reif was doing. We know from historical information that he used a deadbeat oscillator, which was the Abrams Oscilla class, and we own one of those machines. We believe it to be the very machine that Dr. Reif had because we got it from the government out of the quackeries section there. We had some people that posed to do a article, students that we had to go in and found this instrument and was able to buy it. Not only did it still work, but it still did the outputs, the deadbeat oscillator still worked. It was in pristine condition. And so we were able to gather that. We're also able to get some of his original light tubes. Colleen, if you'll change that one. Well, this is his microscope. You'll see two different light tubes here. If you have seen the original black and white footage that was narrated by John Crane, the round globe that you see here up front was one of the original tubes that was in that video. The one behind it is one of the latest ones, or the later ones, that Dr. Reif did. We've had access to this. We've been able to take it apart, test it, find out what kind of gas was in it, how he built it, and then kind of design our technology based on what Reif actually had. We have a lot of good notes, his original lab notes, that tells how he did stuff, how they tested the BioRay device that he had. And this makes a difference. But just because Reif was successful in the 20s and 30s and they had a 100% cure rate with cancer doesn't mean that BioRay or any other company can duplicate those results. We have a very high success rate, but we're not 100% either. And that's because of several factors. Reif was in with the AMA and worked very closely with them until they turned on him in 1939. We have had a lot of good medical backing, but we're slowly getting ingrained into the orthodox system. 4 weeks ago, our company was granted what's called IRB status, which is Institutional Review Board. This is a document in a way that allows us to go out into the medical community, to doctors, hospitals, place our equipment there, and actually get hardcore data from the status quo. Now, we have a lot of data already. We have a lot of before and after case histories. I'm going to leave what I call my blue book with Colleen, who will be working in our booth today. You can actually see before and after case histories with their medical releases. Now, what I mean by that, testimonials are good, and testimonials are a dime a dozen. I can pay somebody to write whatever I want them to do, but the hard medical data makes a difference. And we have CAT scans, x-rays, and we keep on file all of the medical data to back up what we bring to the shows. And while you have to realize that these are people's personal medical records, and we can't just give them out, the testimonials basically, and some of them do have the medical data attached to them at our table, especially with HIV, we can make that available to our researchers. And one of the reasons that we got the IRB is not only did we prove that our equipment did what we say it would do, but we also proved that it was safe to use on a continuing basis. As far as we know, in the past 12 years that we've used this technology and continue to improve it, there are no ill side effects. They're all positives. Actually, we have learned more by the side effects than the actual direct application. If we're working with somebody to get rid of pain and cancer, we found out that the tumors would go away. Same with leukemia, which is also very painful. HIV and AIDS, which has several known side effects, pain being just one of the few. We, so far, with HIV and AIDS and its side effects, bat 100%. But that's the only thing we've batted 100% on. And that may not hold up as we get more and more cases in. We think that it will because we think we have an excellent program to do that with. But we continue to try to update our technology and make it better. Frequency energy medicine has been around a long time. We have been able to obtain through other sources and the government listings a whole book of frequencies for organisms that they have used in their research for a number of years. So not BioRay and the other people that are doing energy medicine, we're just the tip of the iceberg. The governments have billions of dollars to put into this. I certainly hope that you wouldn't think that we as a company or an individual could stumble across Dr. Reif's work and develop it to this point to where it works and the government and nobody else knows about it. I don't think so. I mean, they've been researching Tesla and a whole host of other things for a number of years. They're probably so more farther advanced than us, but medicine is big business. And so we don't jump up and down and say, we can cure this or we can cure that. What we did is we said, we're going to play on the orthodox medical field. The goal here is to save lives. It doesn't matter if you call it a thingamajig or a BioRay or whatever, as long as it helps the clientele or the people that are using it. And so we applied for pain relief, pain management. Since our unit does not touch the body, they also classified us as a non-significant risk device, which means we have a higher safety factor than anything else out there that touches the body. It's a whole different set of rules and regulations that governs non-invasive as the things that are patient connected. So that was one difference that we looked at. I wasn't too happy because I said, well, but we can do this and that with these diseases. And the doctors looked at me and said, what is your goal here? I said, well, it's to help people save their life. And they said, well, as long as you achieve the end result, then that should be all that counts. And if you can do that, if somebody has a stage 4 lung tumor and they're constantly coughing and they're in pain and they're on pain medication, and you can go in there and relieve that pain, and as a side effect the tumor goes away, then you've accomplished what you want to accomplish. So I said, that's fair, I can do that, I can live with that. Because the end result is what you're after, not what you call it. And if we have to do it as pain relief and pain management, and we can help people with cancer and herpes and HIV and a whole host of other things, then that's what we're going to do. We've worked very hard to be accepted. That doesn't mean that we're turning our back on anybody. My goal is that in this company has always been to help people save their lives, and you can do that through education. Help them understand cause and effect, which is what we teach. The BioRay can be a primary tool or a secondary tool, but we combine it with a nutritional protocol and detox and rehydration of the body. We are 80% liquid, so it's very important that you're able to move out the toxins in your system. The food today that we have will sustain life. It does not sustain health. So we have to have good nutritional supplements that add to the body and not take things away. Above all else, we're two things. We are a natural being, not synthetic, so why put synthetics in unless you absolutely have to? So there is a difference in what we do as compared to other people. And there are a lot of good people out there working in this field. Not because I'm with this company, but I think that we've looked at a lot of things that are out there. I think we're the best. We're also the most expensive. But that doesn't make us better. What makes us better is the fact that we can put continual case histories in front of people with most illnesses that we've worked with and help them. And that's where the difference lies. The BioRay is a maximum of 300 watts output at the tube. We generally run it at 250 watts. We have matched the transformer, the output circuitry, and everything to the tube. We have also encoded on the system a picomagnetic gauze. Because if you look at us at our lowest form, we're electrical chemical beings with a magnetic field. And you have to address all these functions in the body if you're going to help the body correct the problem that it has. I've never told anybody, and I would never say that the BioRay cures anybody of anything. It can be a stimulus. It can be an activator. We know that through dark field microscopy and a lot of blood work, plus before and after case histories that are followed by third-party physicians, that we have been able to document a lot of the effects of the BioRay. Just recently, the Germans took our tube and did a analysis of it, and we know a lot about the spectral output of it, in addition to the electromagnetic and frequency fields. We do generate a tremendous amount of harmonics, which is a key to Dr. Reif's work. We have a very strong square wave, along with a host of several other things. So, since we are running late today, what I'd like to do is open up the floor to questions. And I can't tell you that I'll have all the answers, but I'll certainly try to answer your questions for you, and I'll repeat them so everybody can hear them. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that you got the extensions of this Mr. Reif from the government. They had it in storage?
Well, no, the quackery people had the Abrams Oscilloclast. That's the only device we got from the government. The rest of the...
Interesting that they didn't destroy it. Evidently they think there's nothing to it, or they would have.
Exactly. They thought it was all medical fakery. If you look on QuackWatch or some of the government listings, you will see that Abrams, Reif, Lakavosky, and all those people were listed as quacks. So, no, they certainly wouldn't have given it to us if they thought we could make something of it. Yes, sir.
Have you tried it on anybody with MS?
Have we tried it on anybody with MS? Yes, we have, and we've had some limited success. We're working with 5 MDs in Huntington Beach, California, who are working with ALS and MS, and we hope later in the year to have some answers for that. They believe that it's partially virus-based, and if it is, that'll help. I've just talked with some people today that thought it was genetic defect. If it is a genetic defect, are we in fact missing that genetic part, or is it in there and just not turned on? And that's a question that we hope to answer, or at least hope to be able to help people with. Yes, sir.
In the field of dermatology, in particular acne, what can you say about that?
In the field of dermatology and acne, what can I say about that? Well, the BioRay is excellent for clearing up secondary infections for staph or strep that may be caused by the effect of acne. I personally think that in a lot of cases, especially in young adults, that the colon needs to be cleaned up. I think it's an overloading of the toxins in the body that they have to get out of the system, and they break out either on the back or mostly the face, because it's an easy area. I'm not a dermatologist and I'm not a medical doctor, but I have been asked this before, and I've talked to several dermatologists, I've talked to some MDs, and I've talked to several alternative people. And in the cases that we worked with in their offices, when we put them on either colonics or oral colon cleansers or both and used the BioRay, we could get the secondary infection with no problem, and we could clear it up much quicker by cleaning up the colon and detoxing the system. So I think the two combinations makes a very good headway. Yes, ma'am.
Have you worked on eczema?
Have we worked on eczema? Eczema, seborrhea, and psoriasis would fall into the same categories. It's dirty, well, in most of the time I think that's dirty blood. And you clean up the system. We recommend distilled water because it's devoid of everything and it has a negative charge that can help attract the cell debris, ureas, and albumin and get them out of the system. Okay. Yes, sir.
What's the next step after your IRB status? What are you going to do with that?
Well, actually, what we're going to use that for is to gather data, obviously. to get us entrenched across the U.S. In every hospital and doctor's office that we can, all the alternatives. We've been accepted about 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago into a naturopathic school where they're using our equipment and base protocols to teach MDs, ODs, and the people that are coming from the orthodox end to get a naturopathic education. So the BioRay is being taught in at least one school now in Arkansas. What we plan to do with that, an IRB legally allows you to collect this data, put your equipment out there, and the doctors and people using it can be free of harassment from the FDA as long as they follow the guidelines of the IRB. We, at one point, will apply for approval, but before we do that, we'll take all the documentation that we have and apply for a cure for disease, if it goes that far. We believe that within 2 years or less, pharmaceuticals or somebody's going to come to buy in or buy us out, and we'll let them take care of that. But at least we'll be able to get it out there safely. It's a lot of lives that can be saved in the meantime. Yes, sir?
Where is this located in Arkansas?
You would ask me that. I can get you that information. Dr. Sipple and them sit on the board. I didn't bring that with me. I don't keep that locked in my head, but I can get you that answer. Yes, sir? How deep penetrating is the ray itself? Well, there are several aspects to the BioRay. The photon energy, the light energy, depending upon the wavelength being produced, can go from just the surface or subsurface to a maximum of 1 to 3 inches, depending upon the wavelength. That's the photon energy or the light energy. The frequency energy, the harmonics, the waveform penetrates the body totally. It'll also go through walls much the way. If you look at what Reif had and what most people that are doing with beam type projection systems, is we are in essence, to an extent, a miniature radio transmitting system. As to how you affect the body and in what ways you affect it depends on the power and the carrier wave. There's a lot, our skin is a protectorant, but there are a lot of ways that the body can turn things on or off. And if you can find the ways that the body will accept and use, that makes you more effective. And we think that's one of the reasons we're more effective than most people out there, is because we think we've discovered some keys in the body that allow our energy fields to work very effectively, or at least stimulate the body effectively. We know that we've been able to stimulate bone marrow production when there was none in leukemia. We've been able to energize white blood cells and also stimulate the production of white blood cells. It's an overall energized system to the body. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned AIDS. There's varying forms or varying progressions of that disease. Just how far along
Okay.
can you treat it or can you treat it?
Since I mentioned HIV and AIDS, how far along can we help somebody and how far advanced can the disease be that we have worked with? Well, unfortunately, we are given the worst case scenarios, people who have very short times to live. The last case in the case history that you can see out there on Mr. Kennedy was a young male who had full-blown HIV AIDS. He had lost over 50 pounds. He'd done everything he could with his doctors. They had sent him home to die. And his hair was out. The growth on his back was 6 inches protruding. In 7 weeks, we took his viral count from above 750,000 and his T4 count, which was 11. Theoretically, the man should not be walking around. He should be dead. But in 7 weeks, when they did the first blood work, his doctor did the first blood work, his viral count dropped to 270. Not 270,000, but 270. And his T4 went from 11 to 85. At the end of 12 weeks, his viral count was undetectable. It was below 50. And his T cell was up to 89. He still today continues to use the BioRay. He was just at a conference with us over in San Jose last week. The man looks like a young Michael Landon. He's got a full head of hair. He rides his bike 3 miles a day to work out when he couldn't even walk up 5 stairs without giving out and needing help. The man looks phenomenal. His doctor is just flabbergasted. And this is just one of the latest cases. In the earlier stages of HIV, when the virus is detectable, we've been able to wipe it out also. So in answer to your question, all stages so far. That's as far as we know. Okay. Let me explain to you real briefly about a chat house. A chat house is not an internet site that we use. A chat house is caring people around the country who own or have bought a BioRay for their own personal use and saw what it did for them or their family. In some cases, it's people that have bought them out of compassion to help other people. And it's a home or a business where we can refer people to get help. Well, it is against the law for a non-practitioner to treat anybody for anything. It's not against the law for them to come talk to me while I treat myself, hence a chat house. So if you have cancer and you came to me, which I ran my chat house for 5.5 years, this is where a lot of our documentation came from, and you told me that you had genital herpes or you had cancer, I said, well, you know, that's kind of curious. I've thought about that myself. And so why don't you have a seat here and relax, talk to me while I run these systems for myself, because I certainly would want to make sure that I don't have that. And if you'll come each day and chat with me, because I'm going to be here at least from 9 to 10:30, and I'm going to be here in the afternoon from 4 to 6. And I make it convenient, but you have to kind of help yourself. Now, if I'm going to help you, you got to help me, because I have to commit my time to you. And my time to me is very valuable. Why should I care more about you than you care about yourself? So you've got to work as hard as I do. And here's my nutritional protocol that I do, so I want you to do that too. And we'll just kind of help each other. And that's basically how it works. Is there a charge? At mine, no, there never was. At others, most of them, yes, because they have to pay for the equipment and they have to pay for their facility. And what are the charges? Well, we have probably our largest and most successful chat house in Las Vegas, Nevada, which charges a $20 donation. All of the people that I work with, money is not the issue. No one is turned away because of their ability to pay or inability to pay. If they cannot afford the $20 a day, whether they come once or twice, it's free. It's voluntary. It's a little bit different. And the young lady who runs our chat house, which is actually her chat house, and has some of our best success stories, is Colleen Van Vleck. Colleen, please stand up. I met Colleen over the phone almost 2 years ago, and we talked for 6 months solid before I ever went out and did a lecture. And she arranged to have that done at one of the best and most prestigious country clubs, invited 108 people because that's what the room would hold, and out of 108, 92 showed up, which I thought was quite amazing. And out of that, there was a young lady by the name of Afton Graft who showed up on 200 milligrams or close to 200 milligrams of morphine a day, stage 4, terminal, been turned away by everybody that she had been to in the later stages of her disease. Her doctor is still working with her, but she had breast cancer that had metastasized to the lung and the liver and all the bones. She had also what they call a moth-eaten shoulder, right shoulder, from the effects of the cancer that had eaten the bone away. And she had her arm in a sling, and they told her that if she moved it up, it would probably break. Well, I talked extensively with her husband, I mean, this guy had every question you could think of. He was an electronics expert and a computer programmer. Everybody's nightmare. But if your equipment does what you say it will do, you don't mind talking to these people. And I answered most all of his questions. Some of them I did not have an answer for, and he wasn't looking for a guarantee because they'd been through all the orthodox. They had been through Mexico 3 times. She had nothing to lose, and she really didn't even want to do it. And Bob, her husband, asked her, please, let's try it. And so they brought her over to Colleen's home because we didn't have the chat houses, just started right there in her living room, and laid her out on the couch. And when I really saw how bad off she was, I turned to Colleen and I said, man, this is the worst case we've ever had. If we can save this young lady, we can really do something. In 4 days, we alleviated 90% of her pain. In 2 weeks, she was at a wedding, did a slow dance. Actually, she said she did a swing dance, but I'm hoping it was a slow dance with her husband. That was February, almost 18 months ago. All the bone in her shoulder has healed and filled back in. Her cancer, and we continue to have updates from her, is gone. And she's living a normal life. And when I first talked to her and I asked her what she was doing, she has 5 children. Is that right? And she was writing what Mom wants to say and wants you to know after I'm gone. She tore that up and threw it away along with her will that she was writing and wrote a new will. So she's still alive, and she does some of the conferences with us. Her and her husband come. So we have some very good success stories, and everybody does. What about the people that we don't save? Well, we can't save everybody, unfortunately, especially not at this time. But for those that really work hard, because you do have to work hard. Once you're sick and your body's down, you have to fight for life. And nobody can do that but you. Don't listen to a doctor that will tell you there's no hope. Hope and mental attitude is half the game. And we try to cover all these aspects. But you also have to have the basic building blocks. You've got to have good food, good nutrition, good detoxification. And you've got to have something that can take the load or help take the load and fight for you. And a BioRay is one of those devices. And it can work during chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and we have done that. We've worked with slow drip chemo pumps, and we've had great success. But unfortunately at this time we don't save everybody. But what's important is that it's important to the people that are saved, that save themselves. I personally can't save anybody. They have to do it. We can guide them, we can assist them, and we can certainly share all the information that we've learned over these 12 years. And that's what we do. So I would invite you, while you're here, if you know somebody that has cancer, and most adults do, or any other illness, take a look at the information that we have. And keep an open mind and share this with other people so that it can't be destroyed again. A stone in a pond creates a ripple. And that's what we're doing. We're creating a ripple effect. Everybody here is one important piece to somebody out there. So share the knowledge and tell them what you know. They may not believe you, but usually when their life is on the line, they'll think, gee, you know, Joe told me about this device. Well, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to try it out. And that's where the difference comes. Makes a big difference. We can all help our friends and our family. Don't be negative. Get positive people around you. If you got negative friends and you're dying of an illness, get rid of them. Say, I love you and you're my best friend, but come back when I'm well. I need your support. Everybody needs that support. So don't let them take you down. What I'd like to do is walk through some slides real quick that I brought. Colleen, if you do the next one, please. This is one of the original tubes that we used to help test and design. The lady that owns this equipment here, she has some of the original BioRay equipment. She has 3 of these in mint condition. This particular tube had been used quite extensively. and it had 100% argon gas in it. Our tube uses a 90-10 argon-neon mix, all from Germany with German electrodes. And Reif talks about an anode-cathode system, positive, negative. We can do all that. Nobody, including us, operates at the high frequencies that Dr. Reif used. Number one, the FCC would come clamp you down. We all use subharmonics. But if you stop by our table and look at the government list there, at the debilitating frequency of the organisms that they're talking about, you'll see that they're all in the lower harmonic range. So that'll help. Colin? This is a deadbeat oscillator that we're talking about, that actually Barry Lyons talked about in the cancer cure that worked. Reif used a deadbeat oscillator in his system, and this is what it looks like. This is the Abrams oscilloclast that we were able to obtain from the quackery people for the government, and it still works today. We've made extensive studies of it. This is Dr. Reif in his later years with one of his microscopes and a photomicrographic camera on one end, which shot 8x10 pictures and also film. Dr. Reif is buried in San Diego, California. He died August 1971, which is upsetting to me to know at that time, had I known what I know now, I could have met this man, which would have been wonderful. But we all have paths, and we don't always cross with the people that later in life we wish we could have met. But if you're ever out there, go by it's in Mount Hope Cemetery. Go by and see him and say hello. I do every time I'm out there. This is a letter from Jerry Kennedy on what his doctors and stuff did. Now, Kennedy used our equipment, but his doctors documented the blood work and everything else. We also have the graphs where they actually graphed this out to mark his progress. And now he's off the scale. He's doing so good. Normal is about 12.0 to 13 on one of his blood markers, and he's at 13.7. His doctors are astounded at how well he's doing. We have in the blue book out there, this is a CAT scan of a young lady who had the lung cancer, stage 4, Pat Sanders in Houston, Texas. If you stop by the booth, you'll be able to see the before and afters of this. They don't show up real good here, but she had 90% involvement in both lungs, and we were able to get it under control and get rid of it, 90% of it, in 60 days and clear it out all within 90. One more. This is a young lady that had stage 4 inflammatory breast cancer. She was also under the care of her pulmonary doctor because she had, in her car, she had some work done, and they had bathed the dashboard in sulfuric acid. And she breathed in these fumes over a period of a couple of months, and it burned up most of her lungs, and they started scarring, or they did scar over. And her doctors told her that if she were to get rid of the cancer, that within 2 years, she could probably get her lungs to healing and back. Well, I met her last year at the Cancer Control Society. She bought a BioRay, started using it. In 60 days, she was totally free of cancer. And her pulmonary doctor was astounded. Not only were her lungs, the scarring going away, but her lungs were already generating new tissue and rehealing. This was a side effect that we found out of her working with herself for the cancer. So the side effects of the BioRay are equally as strong or as good as the primary that you try to do. And this is Afton Graft, and this was made about 6 months ago, this picture. I'll have dinner with her and her husband tonight. She is doing fabulously well. She talks to a lot of the people who come around the country to our different chat houses or call in needing help and want to verify what we're talking about. She is one of the people that, she's not a paid spokesman, but she will tell her story, and we have a document out there that you can read about what she went through and where she's at today. That's this next one. That's it. You can click it off. Okay. Yes, sir.
Relative to the different, there's a number of different Reif technology devices. I've got one made by Lyn Kinny up in Canada.
Reif Bear device, yes. I worked with Dr. Bear for, off and on for a year in 95, 96.
I've had it for about 6 years. Well, hesitant to use it though at all. I don't know.
It's a good basic, we started there, we did similar, not exactly the way Dr. Bear did it, we did similar technology like that back in the 80s and moved away from it because of what we consider to be some of the inherent dangers of RF. The Bear Tunny device is a good device. It does good basic work, but Colleen, I need my blue book. I'll read you a couple of things in just a minute, but it is a good basic device. It's about just under half of what ours cost. Their top-end device, I think, is at about $2,600. Ours is $5,850. Is it worth the price difference? That's something each individual has to decide. But if my life is online, I want to buy what I consider to be the best proven. And they have some good success stories, but they don't have a lot of stage 4 survival rates, and they'll tell you their limitations. They talk about it in their equipment book, which is good. They're very honest, and we try to deal above. The easy thing for anybody to do is knock somebody else's equipment. I don't feel that that's right, especially when they're not here to defend themselves. What I will read is what Dr. Bear posted to the Reif list in 1997, because we haven't worked with him since then. He's talking about when he's figured some things out, and he wants to thank some people, and he lists them. He says, to Lyn Kinny for passing on the way the Dallas Reif group operated their UV tube device. Well, to play on the medical field, ultraviolet C, or UVC, is used in TB wards to control TB. And it's also FDA approved for germicidal use. And so that's the way we went at it. We said, oh, we can build a device and make it a pulsed germicidal lamp and get in here, and we did, and we got approvals that way. What he also went on to say, says the work of the Dallas Reif group. Now, who's the Dallas Reif group? Well, that's one of our groups. Through the years, from '86 on, the Dallas Reif group, Intertron, BioRay, BeamRay, these are all different things that we have evolved through, that we've worked with. We're now known as the BioRay company. But the Dallas Reif group was a group that I worked with and funded off and on for 3 years in the early days of our research. We had some very good people there. The work of the Dallas Reif group showed that an optimum pulse rate of 4 hertz with their unit produced the best effects, which is true. Our pulse rate, standard pulse rate, is 4, but the body with our unit at any rate will accept and use pulse rates from 0 to 5. Once you get above 5 pulse rates, it seems that the cells and the skin act as a shield to, in essence, ricochet it off. We have our pulse rate to go up to 15, but we have found that as long as we stay 5 or less, we're much more effective. It says, in other words, the Reif's original unit was a modified oscilloclast with a much wider range of radio frequencies and pulse rates. Well, as far as I know, in the Reif community, we're the only people that have obtained an oscilloclast and the deadbeat oscillator and use it. In addition, by owning the original 16mm film of Reif in his lab, we've been able to go frame by frame with our electronics engineers and analyze the waveform patterns and the harmonics that Dr. Reif produced. We're coming out with a video that shows side by side the output of our tube to the oscilloscope tracings that is in that original historic footage. And we have all the waveform patterns that Dr. Reif, let's not say all, let's say most all of the waveform patterns that Dr. Reif used. We have a lot more harmonics. We're very rich in harmonics. Our rise and fall, or what I call power points, are extremely sharp and hard, which I think helps to make us make a difference. He also went on to say, in other words, as the Dallas Reif group found, the radio wave was variably pulsed at the output end. And let me tell you, that is one of the major keys. Our unit is the only unit out there that is designed the way that Reif, at least the way we understand it, the way that Reif designed his output circuitry, and he came from the output circuitry directly into the tube. Our frequency generator is not 4 stages away from the tube. Everything is made, mixed, and put out at the output circuit directly into the tube. So if you were to take one of our units and put it on a spectrum analyzer or an oscilloscope and look at what's at the output circuitry, hang an air probe and catch the signal and the harmonics and square wave and everything that's being broadcast out, it'll be almost identical to what's at the output circuitry. And that's a very important key. Just a second. Yes?
So what you're saying is that you have some sort of high voltage switching circuitry that's the first stage from the generator. So you have a generator, then you have a drive, and then you have a tube.
No, what I'm saying is ours is all combined at the output stage. For example, in the device that this gentleman is asking about, you have a frequency generator that feeds into a CB. We have to understand electronics, what a CB does, it clips the harmonics top and bottom regardless of how much you modify it. Also, a CB is designed to pass a sine wave, not a square wave. So there are limiting factors there. That doesn't make it any lesser. It may make it a little less effective, but it's also very inexpensive to build, which is what the masses need, or it helps.
So yours is an oscillator driver directly to the tube.
I don't know how to answer that because I'm not an electronics guy, and let me give a plug here. If you stop by our booth, there is a Reif conference, and my electronics engineers and doctors do attend this every year, and that's a question that we could answer for you there. I had a vision when I got in this. I understood Reif. I can see it. I know how it's supposed to work. I know what it's supposed to be coming out. I can't build it. I'm not an electrical engineer. But I don't let that hold me back. I went to these people and I said, this is what I want you to do. This is what's got to come out of this tube. Now, you tell me how you can build that. And then when we started shrinking it down, they did. We had a big roll-around box that had all this stuff in it and did that. And then eventually the unit you see out there, it was twice that size. And I said, well, it's got to be able to fit into a carry-on for an airplane. Now you got to get everything in here and into this little box that I went out and bought because they're off the shelf. It's cheaper. And they said, no, man, we can't do that. I said, sure you can. Sure you can. 18 months later, they did. So we have it. And it'll be even smaller within the next, better be ready by the Reif conference or I'm going to get shot. But it'll be even lighter and better. Yes, sir.
What frequency do you use as a carrier?
Is that important to you to know that?
I'm wondering if you're using the 27.15.
No, sir, we don't. We use...
Use the original Reif?
No. Reif had 11 and 17 hertz, or megahertz for carriers. I think it was 11 something or 16. I'd have to go back to the notes to see. Our base carrier is 37. And yeah, but now here's something that's different in our equipment that's different than everybody else's. We can vary the carrier as per with the frequency that's being produced, which makes it even more effective, or at least it has for us in our equipment. You have to understand, folks, that what I'm talking about is our equipment. I'm not up here slamming anybody else's, especially what this gentleman has, because it is a good piece of equipment. There are differences, and that's good. That's what America's about. We can agree to disagree, and not everybody drives Fords and Chevrolets. And last but not least, the unit mentioned in the story seems to use pulse rates of between 1.3 and 3.1. This is an article that Dr. Baer was referring to, I think, in the Clayton journals and something else, which is certainly in the range by Abrams and by the Dallas Reif group. And so when Jim and I quit working together or consulting or being friends or whatever it was that we were doing, you know, if he says all this, which he did and posted to the Reif list, why didn't he build a unit that way that does that? I mean, we went way beyond that, where, you know, we figured this out and shared it, and I shared things with him and he shared things with me. I like Jim Barry. He's a good guy. I'd like to think he's my friend because I try to stick up for him, believe it or not. I hope you don't take what I'm saying the wrong way. It's certainly not meant to be. So he's a good guy, and they have a good piece of equipment. I just happen to think that ours is better. Anything that works in a Reif Bear or a Roy Hall device will work 5 times better than ours as a whole, 3 to 5 times better, very easily. Okay. Yes, sir.
How about osteoporosis?
Well, what is osteoporosis? The one thing that, if you've got pain from osteoporosis, yes, the BioRay and other devices like it can help. But osteoporosis is bone loss, and that's because we're not getting or absorbing enough calcium in. Just for a man and a woman to function each day, takes 12 to 1,300 or 11 to 1,200 milligrams of elemental good calcium a day. So it breaks back down to nutrition. That's one of the key things that we have to have. It's not in the food today. So if you're not taking the nutrition, you're not going to get it. We can help with the pain. And osteoporosis, a lot of people will talk about, says, well, my grandmother fell and broke her hip. Well, in most cases, they find that they didn't fall and break their hip. Their hip broke and they fell. Because above all, the body is going to survive. The pelvic area and our bones are the largest storehouses of calcium. And they're there for a reason, because the body is going to make sure that the lungs and the brain and the heart and our major functions are going to operate. The heck with everything else. You know, that's up to us to make sure it's in there. So it would help with the pain, but it would not replace. You have to remember that Reif technology is not a be-all, save-all for everything out there. I mean, I've seen people put out frequency lists, and we give them out too, because everybody says, well, gee, so-and-so's got a frequency list. You know, we just give them everybody's and let them make up their own mind. We tell them what we know for a fact works and works consistently. But if somebody comes up to you and you're running frequencies for stomach pain, why do you have stomach pain? Somebody could have shot you. That'd be pretty painful. Or somebody could have come up and punched you in the stomach. BioRay wouldn't be much good against those. I don't think any technology would. But if you have a stomach ache due to parasites or candida or yeast, then yes, we're very effective against that. So you have to use a lot of common sense with all of these devices. It's very important that you do that. Yes, ma'am?
What's the best clothing or unclothing when using the BioRay?
Okay. What's the best clothing or unclothing to use with the BioRay? We recommend that if you're in a private setting, when I use my BioRay, I have a pair of shorts on and nothing else. The less clothing, the better, because that's just energy that it has to use to get through. However, the BioRay is designed to penetrate normal clothing. You can leave your jewelry and everything on. You don't have to take anything off, but don't cover up under a blanket. The less clothing, the better. It'll penetrate normal clothing, and we have probed with probes on top of the clothing, against the skin, on the back, against the skin, to make sure that when we designed this unit, we had enough power to penetrate the whole body. And we have enough and then some. So, less is better if you're private. How are you doing, by the way?
Just great. God bless you and everybody that's listening.
Thank you. This young lady goes to a chat house run by a nurse in Fort Worth, Jean Strayer. She had, would you like to come up here and tell them?
I get nervous when the microphone comes on.
Okay.
I guess I have done do the medical documentation on my case, but it didn't take rocket scientist to know I had a large lump in the right breast. When I met Jean, it was through Colleen and a friend of my husband, and she immediately started me on the ray and found that I could tolerate
Thank you. No, I did not know she was going to be here at this show. So, very good. But it's knowledge. One thing that's important to you if you're investigating, just like you're here at Exotic Research, there are a lot of conferences around the country with a lot of different people that have different views. Especially when you're dealing with health issues, knowledge is power. I encourage everybody to come to the Reif conference because there's an array of people that will be there with different things, just like here. Cancer Control Society, the same thing. Anything that appeals to you that has to deal with your health, whether it's through nutritional, electronic medicine, which we would fall under, or anything along those lines, don't leave anything unturned. We don't have all the answers, and I know medical science doesn't have all the answers. So it's great to investigate. And at times you can be not only information overload, but it can also be very confusing. So take the knowledge you have and go with what you feel is best for you. Yes, sir?
When and where is the Reif conference?
When and where is the Reif conference? It's the first weekend of October, October 6th, 7th, and 8th in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And there are some brochures that will give you the hotel and phone numbers and everything at our booth out there. This is the fourth one. They've all been great. Yes, sir?
I noticed before you mentioned there weren't any side effects, but relative to people who run the chat houses who are exposed to this, you know,
Continually.
Is it, I thought I noticed with the Tony machine there that the microflora getting destroyed, beneficial microflora.
Right. Yes, that's the difference between ours and theirs. The RF kills constantly. If you do any studies on 27 megahertz or RF as a whole, at the higher frequencies or the actual RF energy, we as humans have basic intestinal flora that we have to live with. Candida yeast, the friendly guys, along with the stuff that we need for waste disposal. What we have found in the tests that we've done is that when you use the BioRay on a continual basis, what as a rule happens is you will kill off the overflow during the first to third sessions. You may develop a light to medium case of diarrhea from the kill off. That's the only unpleasant side effect, but at least you know it's working. What will happen is the organisms will migrate away that live daily in our systems, away from the constant frequency that's there. You have to understand you're not applying a broad base of frequencies, hundreds of thousands of them, but you're applying specifically to affect and kill or change or stimulate something to happen in the body. And what we have found that they will migrate away. I've been using these for